Hi, I'm Judy Wiedow. I retired from the University of Texas 15 years ago. I began work at the University of Texas in 1976. When I came to Texas, I was working at Northwestern for a couple of years where I learned how to catalog. I was with two other catalogers that helped train me in cataloging. And so I got my job at the University of Texas, and I was just plunked down in the middle of Texas where I was by myself. I was the only music cataloger. There were no other music catalogers in Austin, and there was no way to communicate with other people. And so I went to my first chapter meeting, Texas chapter meeting, where I met some other catalogers from Texas. And so we developed kind of the camaraderie where we could call one another to get advice if we needed it.
What would you talk about the first meeting you had with other catalogers to get a group organized?
So I went to my first MLA meeting in 1977. And at that time, OCLC was really in its infancy. The University of Texas was inputting records into OCLC, but not music records yet because the MARC format had not yet been fully developed. It was being worked on by a task force. And on this task force was Olga Booth, who was at Ohio University then, and that same year left Ohio and came to the University of Texas. And so she was one of my resource people. So anyway, in 1977, a group of people led by Lenore Coral from, I believe she was at Cornell, and she led the meeting, got together a group of people, catalogers, and asked if we would be interested in forming a chapter of music catalogers who could talk to OCLC and give them our concerns, what we needed. And we all agreed, yes, because we were faced with this new format with not much guidance in how to use it. And so we finally had people, resource people, that we could bring our questions to and concerns and start creating ways of using this new MARC format.
What was it like using OCLC back in those early days?
It was a challenge. For one thing, it was really, really slow. And you would input whatever you were inputting, and you would just wait and wait and wait for it to respond. A lot of times it just went down, and there was a lot of downtime. Okay, let's stop.
Would you describe the searching mechanism for music materials back in those days?
Searching was not real helpful for particularly music. We could only search by derived key searches. You could put in the first 4 letters of the composer's name, 3 letters, 3 letters for his surname, and 1 for titles. So if you were searching like Haydn Symphony, Uniform titles were not indexed. 028s were not indexed.
That's right.
Qualifying by type, score, or recording and date was not available yet. So imagine searching for a Haydn symphony. Even to find the catalog record was impossible. So you would just input another record because there wasn't any way to know if there was a record in there. So truncated entries did not have much information. It was author, title, place, not publisher, and date. Sometimes the search was too big for the system to handle. Searching authority records, there was a 256 record limit.
Yep.
Until about 1980 when that increased to 1,500. And so when you're researching for uniform titles for prolific composers like Bach, Vivaldi, Telemann, Haydn, you couldn't do it. The system just didn't work. And so frustrated users began publishing uniform titles for these prolific composers that were in the database. They just published a complete list in the newsletter. So then people got wind of these newsletters having these uniform titles in. They started ordering newsletters. And that was when they decided to publish a book, The Best of MOUG, which had lists for all of the uniform titles. And the first two editions of The Best of MOUG were done by Anne McCullough. And then by the third edition, she wasn't able to do them anymore, so then I took over. And I published the third, fourth, fifth, and sixth editions. And so when I published the first edition, there wasn't a World Wide Web, there wasn't a listserv, there was not any technology to get the information out that this was available until the newsletter came out 4 months later. And that's when the orders started coming in. So when I published the fourth edition, we finally had a listserv for MLA where I put the information out on that, and orders started coming in right away.
Would you talk about how MOUG grew and developed during the time of your involvement with it, and what some of its major activities were during that time?
The first meeting involved a question and answer session, which was thrilling for me because we all went with our long list of questions. And the people running these questions and answers were a representative from OCLC and a representative from the Library of Congress. And so they were coping with these questions, and they were our main source of being able to use OCLC. Most of the early sessions included tagging workshops, and that was very useful for people to come and learn how to tag, because we were all just struggling. It soon became evident that we needed to do some retrospective cataloging, clean up the database, and that was taking place in the early 80s. And then we started cooperating with one another and being able to enter our records into OCLC. And then this led to other projects, the Enhance project, which was started by a few libraries being capable of actually changing existing OCLC records. And this gradually expanded to where a lot of libraries could go in and change these OCLC records. It also led to a cooperative authority file where we could start adding authority records as we created them.
That was in around 1992 or so. I think when we started doing our NACO training, I think you and I went through it about the same time together.
Okay. Now, in 1981, AACR2 came along, which required major changes to composer names and uniform titles. And OCLC ran a conversion that took care of a lot of that, but it also required some cleanup. And the cleanup was left up to OCLC at that time. And Jay Whites was a young upstart at OCLC at that time, and that task fell to him. And eventually that was shared with other libraries. And Jay Whites, I have to give some credit to Jay Whites. Jay Whites was, and it still is, our rock and anchor for OCLC concerns and questions about how to handle arcane cataloging questions. I want to say that MOUG organization, we were the first users group, and it was through music catalogers putting pressure on OCLC to address some of the music concerns that they kind of shoved aside because we were just a small group. They finally were able to institute some tagging and whatnot so that we could use OCLC better.
Judy, thank you for the interview. It's been great to revisit a lot of old memories that I had forgotten, especially about the mark tagging, which you taught me all that I know about that. So thanks for your time, and hope you continue to enjoy your long and well-deserved retirement.
Thank you very much, and I give my best to members of MOUG who are carrying on with new advancements and adapting to whatever comes along.